Hello, world. Welcome back to Fireside FPL, where we give you fantasy stats and Phil.
We bring football chat.
Absolutely, we do. I'll give you your team
Not this week, though.
Dave. Not this week, yeah. Quick disclaimer. We are going to move. You may have noticed we kind of like to do one FPL video a week where we look back at the previous week, forward to the next week, and then we drop a more relaxed pod episode where we just kind of talk about different topics. We're going to move away from that a little bit because we think those pod episodes are, if we give them a little less frequently, they might mean a bit more. So those are going to come in a little more sporadic, maybe every 2 weeks. Maybe we'll have one a week every once in a while. We'll see how it goes, but we're going to move off that schedule. So you'll notice this week, only one episode coming your way for the FPL topics. You may have also noticed one call out. We have been updating our visuals to match our amazing content.
Yes, sir.
Shout out to our editor, Luis.
From La Guindia Productions.
Our Spanish friend. And video, I know we've mentioned it a few times. It's coming soon. We're getting there. But, yeah, I think that's the only intro. Boys, Phil, Dave, how you guys doing?
I'm doing good.
I've been better.
I'm doing good. Real good.
Real good? Yeah, I mean, I'm a little sad that I now know that Leverkusen probably just isn't able to compete with some of those top-tier teams. Maybe it was an off day. We'll see. But what I'm really amped about is if you live in America, our election cycle is finally over. So the 100,000 ads, commercials, text messages, phone calls that we get constantly to vote for someone is done for another 4 years. So I don't know. Dave, I think you said you were kind of amped for that one too.
Remember the 5th of November.
Yes.
Do you guys know that reference?
Nope.
Yes.
No idea.
That's from Paul Ravine, right?
You mean no? You're
Paul-
thinking the
Paul
British.
Ravine?
You're thinking the British are coming.
Is that like off-brand Paul Revere?
I think he's also thinking the British are coming. In Phil's defense, he's not really from America.
In my
so.
defense, that sounded like the same thing as Remember the 5th of November. Is that a kid's story then?
That's from V for Vendetta, which is very much not a kid's story.
Natalie
but,
Portman, right?
Yeah. But
yeah, I know that
contrary to popular belief, that quote in the movie actually references the 5th of November when Sporting Lisbon beat Man City 4-1 with my new coach.
Nice.
It did happen.
So I am pretty
today.
happy on this day.
Also, when I finally lost faith in VAR too.
A lot of crazy things happened today.
I think that happened a long time ago. In fairness,
God, looking back, maybe we should have had a pod episode. We'll save it.
Hey,
for
let's
next
get
time
into
now.
FPL here, baby.
Yeah, Dave. Without any further ado, man, hit us with those transfers.
Yes. Transfer market. So you'll hear with some of the things we're going to talk about today related to some forwards. The transfer market this week does a pretty nice job, in my mind, of summing up some of what we're going to talk about a little bit later in this episode. So the most transferred in player this week is Chris Wood, which makes a lot of sense since he just keeps on scoring. Regardless of who he plays, what's going on in the world, Chris Wood's probably going to score a goal.
And anyone who subbed him out's a real idiot.
Yeah, you'd have to be dumb to do that.
Really dumb.
Sean did that. Why he's sucking.
Go ahead, Dave.
But he keeps on scoring. Forrest look just really good in general. A note on him is a lot of people are moving off Erling Haaland, which is interesting to me, and I sort of alluded to that a second ago. We'll talk about him in a little bit, but just a word of caution if you're bringing in Chris Wood. He does have a tough upcoming schedule with Newcastle, Arsenal, and Man City, 3 out of his next 4, but that may not matter, as I just mentioned. His teammate is the second most transferred in player this week. Given that difficult schedule, I was kind of a little surprised to see Ola Aina as the second most transferred player in, but again, not because of how he played or Forrest. I think their defense is pretty legit, but just a word of caution. They do have a tough upcoming schedule, but I think Aina, I think Milinkovic, and I think Murillo, who Phil called out last week, who had a nice game. I think all those guys are pretty good, cheap options in defense if you need to cycle out one of your guys that's $4.5 million. Those guys are good options, but the rest of the transfer ins, like Mo Salah, Brian Mbeumo, Guardiol, who we've been recommending, Semenyo, who finally put some of his good expected numbers to use and had a big game this week. You
have to be an idiot to sub that guy out.
Yeah.
Real idiot.
Yeah. Especially if you subbed them both out, him and Wood, that would be.
Anyone who would do that is a real dumb.
I wouldn't want to be that guy, but
Nope.
Sean's that guy.
not a lot to say on these guys. Some people are still moving off Luis Diaz, who coincidentally had a hat trick today in the Champions League. So
Didn't see that.
but we've been recommending. You definitely saw that, Sean.
Yeah, no, I turned it off before I saw all three. Don't worry.
So not a lot on those guys. We've been recommending Guardiola for a couple of weeks now. He scored again this week, so still worth getting into your lineup. A couple other guys there that I'm going to come back to in just a second. But if we move over to the transfer outs, I mentioned Haaland. He's the most transferred out player this week. We're going to do a little session on him at the end of this and give you some more details, some more advice on how to handle him if you've got him. But really, the transfer outs, Van de Veen, Eberici, Eze are both out till after the international break, so that makes sense that they're being transferred out. But yeah, so not a whole lot else I want to mention just yet, but I did allude to the fact that we're going to talk about some forwards. Couple guys in the transfer outs, Ollie Watkins, Kai Havertz. Couple guys in the transfer ins, Isak, and the last guy, Dominic Solanke, which I know, Phil, you had some things to say about him.
Yeah. Are we just going into the roundtables here?
I think so. I think that's all.
Let's do it.
I think that's all the important people in the transfer market.
You got to feel Dave
I'm
on that. He was sending
feeling
that to you
it.
with his mind.
I'm feeling it, but I'm sad today, so I wasn't picking
You
it up.
got to be happy. It's an FPL day, man. Be
It's
happy.
an FPL day. Let's go! Like the video, baby! So, my one-liner for Solanke, and it's the same for any Spurs player, wild card of a pick. You could go very right with him. You could go very wrong with him. I feel like Spurs all years have been up and down. They can beat Villa, they can beat City, and then they can go and tie or lose to Southampton. So I'm really not sure how this is going to turn out. But the Spurs over the next 6 weeks have one of the easiest fixtures. You'll see them on the video here on the screen. They're projected the most goals by any team across those weeks. So really outside of their game against City, which comes the 5th or 6th week, I'm forgetting here, but they have a pretty easy matchup. So definitely worth considering, especially if you're moving away from Haaland. Son's back. He's looking good. He has good connections with Son. They play together. They work well together. So again, I just think he's a really good option. 4 goals in 8 games. Easy fixtures, but again, anyone on Tottenham's a wild card. So worth keeping an eye out for.
Yeah, I had a thought on him too, because when I skipped over him in the transfer section because he's one of the most transferred in players this week. He was one of the most transferred out players last week, and I thought that was kind of interesting. And so we talked briefly last week about how do you handle star players or just more expensive players? So do you chase form and fixtures more? Do you play it more on a week-to-week basis, or do you kind of stick with guys? So I thought it was interesting to see him, on both lists, one week and then on the ins the next week, obviously because he scored twice and had an assist. So he had a great game. So that's what people are kind of chasing. It makes sense. I mean, he's a good forward. He's the number 9, on a good attacking team at a pretty solid price. But then I look at some of the guys that are coming in for him. Like if people are bringing in Solanke, they're moving off Watkins, Haaland, Havertz, Nico Jackson, and kind of like you said, Phil, that could work. It could go either way with him. We've seen some good games, some down ones. I think it's kind of just the natural ebb and flow of these guys. I don't know if I would recommend moving off of him for, obviously Haaland's way more expensive, but Watkins, Jackson, Havertz, Raul Jimenez, I think that's just personal preference, but I just thought it was interesting that he was on both lists in back-to-back weeks.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I think he's just a guy, if you're kind of playing fixtures and you think you're going to transfer him out, in 5-6 weeks, then it's worth a shot. I don't think he's a long-term solution. It's just more fixture-based if that's how you're approaching your team for the year. So
Yeah. But yeah, like you said there, 4 of their next 6 fixtures are pretty good
easy.
matchups.
And
So.
Son's looking good, and he's projected a lot of points too. So
All right. Guess that means it's my turn.
Sure.
So the player I'm looking at, Dave, you kind of mentioned him in the transfer section, is Alexander Isak. We actually talked about him a couple weeks back, kind of in a worse light because he was struggling and then he got injured, et cetera, et cetera. But he looks like he might start, or he is starting to find his legs. The talent was always there. There's a reason that a lot of people picked him up before the season started and early in the season. I think part of the problem might have been early on that Newcastle was struggling. They weren't putting together as a team. I remember Trippier was in some interesting trade news where he wasn't playing and then he was playing. So I think Newcastle was probably part of Isak's problem. Now, recently, they have been kind of turning it on. They beat Chelsea in the EFL Cup. I think it was 2-1. And then they beat Arsenal in this past weekend, 1-0. So two pretty good games for Newcastle to win. That's 2 in a row. He scored in both those games, which is a good sign. If you look at him, we know he started the season all right. 5 points, 2 points, 9 points, and then he had 1, 2, double zeros. He was hurt. Since coming back, though, he's had 2 points, 6 points, 9 points. So that's pretty good. I didn't even notice this. Did they have to play Chelsea 2 times in 3 weeks? They played Chelsea in week 9 and then again in the EFL Cup.
Yeah, they sure did.
I didn't know that. That's interesting. But yeah, he's projected 24 points over the next 6 game weeks. They have a decent schedule coming up. Not great, not bad. They have Nottingham Forest, who we know is a solid team at this point, West Ham, Crystal Palace, and they get Liverpool, and then Brentford, Leicester. So not a terrible schedule, not a great schedule. But here's the thing with him, right? I think, Dave, similar to what you were just saying, if he can keep finding this rhythm that he's in, he's going to turn out to be a really good player. And he has a high price tag. So, I mean, he should be a good player. But I still think there's good options out there like Wood, if you want to go Havertz, if you want to go Jackson. Those are all cheaper than Isak. But he's absolutely someone I think you need to think about right now, especially if you are moving off someone like a Haaland. Dave, you said a little bit of this, but when you're trying to find, like, who's that striker, right? You're picking from these guys. Isak is the most expensive, but do we think he has the most potential going forward in the season? I'm not sure yet.
No.
We're going to find out. Yeah, I'm not. He's not a must-buy for me.
No, I know.
But he's someone to look at. The other thing with him is he's tough to compare right now. Point-wise, he only played 8 games. So you really have to try and compare him to other guys who have played 8 games. Funny enough, Solanke has played 8 games. Mm-hmm. Right? So if we want to put those two guys together, when you look at them, they both played 8 games. Solanke has 4 goals. Isak has 3. Isak got 23 shots to Solanke's 20. Shots on target is 12 Solanke, 10 Isak. And point-wise, Solanke's up by 3 points, 41-38. Expected goals and assists is, one way for Solanke, one way for Isak. Point being is they're pretty comparable. People seem to like Solanke, so I think that's the same reason to like Isak. And I think that's pretty much it for me is look at him if you're looking to find a striker, if you're moving off of Haaland maybe, and I think he's got some potential now. The talent's coming back. We knew it was there. I think it's coming.
Well, he did score 20 goals in the Premier League last year.
Yeah.
So
he's a good player.
We know he can do it, and I'm not going to say he's a must-buy, but I felt like I had to have him, partially because I'm trying to differentiate myself from you guys, but I had some underperforming forwards.
How's that going?
Well, it's going to go a lot better now that those underperforming forwards aren't on my team anymore. But so I did buy him already this week. I wanted to transfer him in last week when I had 2 transfers, but I waited, and I'm kicking myself because Dominic Calvert-Lewin's price fell by $100K, so I couldn't do it last week. But yeah, his schedule is good other than the Liverpool game, and then other than that, I mean, they play Spurs in game week 20, and the only other difficult matchup they have is Man City in week 25. So,
do you guys know if he gets set PKs over Gordon now that he's back?
I believe he got PKs last year.
Okay.
But I think there was a bit of both.
Gotcha. I mean, you don't want to pick a player because of PKs, but it's definitely a consideration.
It's Mbumo's one of the reasons I have Mbumo.
Yeah. But I'm a big fan of him. I had him on my team at the start of the season, then got rid of him when he had the eye thing. So I brought him back now, and I'm pretty happy about that. So, yeah, he's a big recommendation for me. And yeah, I was kind of going to mention him along with my first guy I want to talk about, which is Kai Havertz. And so Kai Havertz is actually one of the two guys I transferred out to bring in Isak. And what I'm about to say, I'm going to kind of talk out of both sides of my mouth. So Havertz has had kind of a rough go of it lately. If you look at his stats for the whole year, they look pretty good. He's at the top of top 6 or 7 in a whole bunch of the important categories. But lately, it's been a different story. The last 3 weeks, so game weeks 8 to 10, he only has 5 points, no big chances, and only 0.23 expected goals. And so I was asking myself, like, is this a good time to jump off of him? I feel like a lot of people are going to do that. And my answer is I think that depends. And I'm also going to tie this back into, the whole trust your studs or like play form and fixtures. And so my recommendation is if you can move him out for Isak, who's like, I think 0.2 mil more, I would do that. And I did do that because Isak has a pretty good schedule coming up, but so does Havertz. And so when I look at his last 3 games, they played Bournemouth, who I think has shown to be a little bit better than we thought.
I would agree.
And then they think they played the 2 best defensive teams in the Premier League, maybe 2 of the 3 best defensive teams in Liverpool and Newcastle. And we know Newcastle pulled, their shenanigans where the ball's only in play for like 53 seconds out of 90 minutes. So I think maybe he's just going through a rough patch like Arsenal in general, but they do have a good schedule coming up. Saka is back now, and he's an important creator for them. So my big advice is unless you want to get Isak into your team, I think I would ride it out with Kai Havertz. I don't think he suddenly is in some sort of funk that's going to last a long time. Same with Arsenal. And I think if you use a transfer on Havertz, maybe that restricts your ability to do things elsewhere on your team. It might also help you differentiate yourself if you're in a mini league, because maybe some of your league mates are jumping off of him given his struggles. But so I'm sticking with him unless you can bring in Isak like I did. So those are my thoughts on him so far.
I like it.
Well, the other thing is, if you look at who people are getting rid of him for, it's the Wolves, 2 guys on Wolves, Solanke, Chris Wood. I mean, I can't argue with that if you need money elsewhere, but we talked about Wood as a tough schedule. We just talked about Dominic Solanke. If guys all have good schedules, Havertz, Cunha, or Strand Larson, I probably would take Havertz out of the 3.
I was going to say, I think that kind of ties into what we're going to talk about later, too, with the Haaland strategy.
Yeah.
All these forwards, it's going to be a risk. Either they're tier 2 forwards, and there's a chance you get it right, there's a chance you get it wrong, but there's a handful of them that you should consider. And based on what you want to do with your midfielders positions, you can pick a cheaper option or more expensive.
Yeah. But yeah, in my mind, if you're comfortable with your squad in general, and I wouldn't feel like I had to get rid of Havertz,
No. He's on a top team, so you're going to pick that over
Agreed.
Cunha, for example.
Yeah,
if you can have the money.
But Phil, I think you're going to talk about one of my boys next.
Absolutely. I know he's probably one of your favorite players. I absolutely hate him, actually. But that is Bruno Fernandes. Last week we talked about Man United's honeymoon phase, and we recommended Rashford. I think Bruno had an assist to him, and Rashford hit the crossbar in last week's game. But Manchester United has some of the easiest fixtures coming up. Bruno Fernandes has 2 goals in 3 games. They are looking good under Ruud. They just got a coach that is considered a top coach. Everyone's comparing to when Ten Hag came to United from Ajax, just the football they were playing, how they were doing it. Hopefully he's a good fit for United, but I just think now's the time when you combine the honeymoon phase with kind of the streak of fixtures coming up. There's no reason you shouldn't try to get someone like Bruno, or by that means anyone on United. So I'm going to go with Bruno. He takes us at pieces, PKs. Yep. He's going to be involved in crosses, assists, and hopefully get some goals in there. Again, the fixtures are Leicester, Ipswich, and Everton. So also at 8.2 million, it's not that high of a cost, and that could allow you to bring in some other guys like Saka Palmer, Son, who are projected pretty high in terms of points over the next 6 weeks. So I think he's definitely, I'm not going to say I'm going to keep him forever, but I would consider him almost a must pick up right now for at least 3 weeks, and then you can consider.
Spicy.
Yeah.
He's just kind of due, like all of United has kind of struggled, but he's too good of a player to have he had like the most shots in the Premier League without scoring or something at one point. But
that's a good thing, Dave.
I mean,
my point is he's due.
He has 15 shots in the box with 0 goals. He scored one at it was a PK.
Are we sure he's good?
Yes, we're sure.
He's as much as I hate saying it, he's great. I don't know if he's fantastic, but he is great. And again, at 8.2 million, I'm locking him in as a must buy.
In.
We might have to come back to this video. Everyone can laugh at me
when he puts up a big goose egg.
But I almost thought about captaining him, but we'll talk about that later. Anyway, right. That's Bruno. On to you, Sean.
On to me.
Or no, we're going Kudus. Kudus first, right?
Oh, my goodness. Oh, yeah, Dave, take it away. That's
Sean,
right.
You're not next. Relax.
So,
yeah, Mohammed Kudus. I wanted to talk about him. He's currently suspended. He's more of a, keep him in the back of your mind, keep him in your back pocket sort of guy, because he is out for one more game, which is good because it is a tough matchup for them. But so Kudus is somebody I also had on my team to start the season, and West Ham is kind of a mess, and they started the season really slow in terms of their attack. Same with Kudus. He had a great season for them last year, and I think he's one of the big keys for them in their attack, because if you look at their team, they don't really have a lot of dynamism in their attack or creativity. Maybe like Lucas Paqueta in that category, but he's
not even playing the full 90 minutes anymore, right?
Not all the time, no. But yeah, Kudus, he caught my attention because it's a shame he got that red card, because his last couple of games before he got suspended were really, really good. The week 7 to 10, which by the way, he's only played 2 of those 4 games. He had 2.36 expected goals, which is second only to Antoine Semenyo. That's more than most Salah, Palmer, Bryan, and Mbeumo over that same time period, again with half the games. He's had 8 shots on goal, which is number 1 among midfielders, 4 big chances, which is tied for first among midfielders. So it looked like he was starting to trend in the right direction and play the way that he's capable of. So yeah, keep him in the back of your mind for a differential pick in a couple of weeks. Their schedule is kind of challenging. He's out for the Everton game, and then when they come back from the international break, they get Newcastle and Arsenal. But then after that, their next 5 games look really nice. So keep him in the back of your mind in a couple weeks from now, again, if you need to differentiate yourself.
I love it. I love that. I love that aspect you give us this season, Dave. We're kind of coming at it from, I think I said this last week, but yeah. I love the fact that you are coming at it from hey, if you need to pick someone up to differentiate yourself, this is a guy, if you're in a league where you're losing bad or you just need to think outside the box, Dave's guys are those people that can make you different from the people you're trying to catch.
Make you lose even worse. Looking at Dave's standings.
Just a different,
make you lose even worse.
Different way to finish 3rd out of 3. But yeah. You don't need us to sit here and tell you why Chris Wood is good, because he scores every freaking game. So that's what I do in pretty much all fantasy sports, is look for ways to gain an advantage.
And we love you for that, and we applaud you.
Not all these guys that I have suggested as differential picks have worked out, but
I don't know.
A few of them have.
I don't know if it's in all fantasy sports, because I offered a trade to Dave today in my fantasy football, and he denied it. So if he wanted to get ahead, he would have said, absolutely.
What a piece of poop.
Yeah, I basically hate Sean. That's why I declined
his trade
request.
Yes.
So.
Classic.
Okay, back on to the sport that people are listening for.
The real football.
The real football. I'm going with Erling Haaland. And we talked about him. It's not that spicy. I think everyone's talking about it. I'm sure everyone listening out there. No, but we're talking about it
more.
I'm sure everyone out there has seen plenty of videos and posts about Erling Haaland. Talked about him, I think, 2 weeks ago. And what we said was, listen, we're at a point now where we're not sure what Man City is. Missing De Bruyne, missing Rodri. And we said, hey, they have an easy schedule coming up. They had Southampton. Let's see how he performs. And we're now 2 weeks past that point. Against Southampton, he had 6 points. He had a goal. But if you saw that goal, it really wasn't that pretty. It was.
That was a good goal.
Goal's a goal.
It was okay.
Goal's a goal. He's getting pulled down.
It was okay.
It's natural instinct.
Last week he played Bournemouth, who Dave did say is probably better than people think, but he didn't score a goal, right? So since that point, he has 8 points. You're spending 15.2% of your allotted money on him, so we need to speak about him again. No point in talking about what he's done previously, right? I think before Rodri went down, it's a moot point at this point.
Yeah.
It's a totally different team.
Let's talk about the future.
Talk about the future, right? So I'm just going to review it one more time. Since the Arsenal game, he had 9 points. That's the game we lost Rodri. And then Newcastle 2, Fulham 2, Wolves 2, Southampton 6. Just said it at that goal. Bournemouth 2. That is awful if you have 15.2 million invested in this guy, right? The schedule coming up's not bad. They get Brighton, then they get Tottenham, Liverpool. That's obviously a very tough game. Then they get Forest, Crystal Palace, and United. So not a bad schedule at all, but let me be clear. I'm not saying like Haaland is a must sell, right? No one can say that because we all know that he's too talented, he's too dangerous. You could sell him this week and then next week kick yourself because he goes out and scores 3 goals. At the same time, you could hold on to him in this particular season, hold on to him, and he goes out and does nothing. He's very hard to read right now, and the reason that I think myself and a lot of other people are moving off him or talking about moving off him is Rodri being out and the price. Price probably being the more important thing there. It's just so high, man. It's such a high price tag for someone who's not producing every single week. Now, that's the main things I want to say, but as a group now, we kind of just want to give a little bit of strategy or just talk a little bit more about Haaland because I know a lot of people are dealing with this decision. So I'll start and then I'll throw it over to you two. But, I have a strategy in place that I'm 50-50 on right now if I'm going to do it this week before the next games are played. So I have Haaland on my team, right? And there's 2 options, right? You can either ride him out. I believe Phil is going to ride him out. Or
ride that boy.
Or you can sell him and allocate that cash to other needs, whether it be 3 cheap options, 2 decent options, 1 really good option, and a cheap option, whatever it is, right? So here's what I would do. I'm not saying everyone can do this, but here's what I would do. I have
Buckle your seatbelts.
Yeah, this is a pretty good strat. I have 1.6 million in my bank from previous transfers. So what I would do is I would sell Haaland for 15.2 million. So that'll give me 16.8. And then I would go get Isak, who we just talked about. I kind of believe in him. I think he's getting his legs back. So once I do that, I'll have 8.5 million left. And then I want to sell Kovacic, who I talked about a few weeks ago. And I said, listen, is the offense going to change with him being in there? Turns out it's not. City I'm down on in general right now. So I'm going to sell Kovacic for 5.6 million. And now I'll have 13.9 million, which I will use to go get Salah, who has been really heating up in the last 3 games. And that'll leave me with 1.2 million left over. So I will basically move off a bad midfielder and get a top midfielder, and I will move off an underperforming Haaland, who we know can be the best striker, to get a pretty solid option, I think, going forward. So that'll be my strategy. And I think I had 1.6 million, but what did I just say I had left over after that? So I'd have So if you have 0.4 million or above, you could use that exact strategy that I just did.
So just summarize it real quick. You get rid of Haaland, and who do you pick up?
I pick up Isak.
You pick up Isak, and then in combination with other transfers, you get Salah as well.
Yes, I would get rid of Haaland, pick up Isak. I'd get rid of Kovacic and pick up Salah. And I had 1.6 in my bank. I'm left with 1.2, which means if you have 0.4 or more, you can employ that exact strategy. If you don't want Isak, go get a cheaper one. Welbeck, Havertz, all those guys all those guys are affordable. So that's my strategy. Dave, I know you want to talk about this as well. So what do you want to say?
I have thoughts. So like if you have Erling Haaland and you're debating getting rid of him, you're trying to figure out if it's worth it. So like I'm going to replace him in a manner like sort of like what Sean just said. Am I going to score more points or not? And you can do projections all you want, and I want to look at it from a different perspective. So if you're going to get rid of him, why are you doing it? And I think if you really think about that, that's going to guide you to the right choice. And so that sounds stupid to say.
No.
And you should laugh at
You're lecturing Sean now.
Yeah, I'm about to go into I'm about to go on a spirit adventure
I'm not-
out in the woods until I figure out what to do with Haaland.
My young Padawan.
But think about what you just suggested. Now, if you have a, if you do that, you said that's 3 transfers you made, right?
2. Yeah.
So if you have 2, 3, 4 transfers, then great. You can
I
get 'em-
think you can only have 2, right, Max?
No, I think you can accrue up to 5. Is it 5?
Yeah, I think it's 5.
Okay.
I think you can accrue up to
Sorry
5.
about that.
But,
Go ahead.
No, but yeah, if you've got some extra transfers, you want to try something different, like what you've seen, cool. If you don't, you have to decide if eating 4 or 8 points is going to be worth it for you. Because like you said, if you go to Isak or maybe you jump down to Chris Wood, that's going to generate $9 million almost if you go down to Chris Wood for that on that transfer. So obviously you don't want to sit there for a week or 2 with like $9 million in your budget. That doesn't do well like for your team value. You're wasting money.
You have to have a plan.
So you have to have a plan. You're going to have to make 2, maybe 3 transfers in some scenario to get him out and have it be worth it. And that is if you have enough transfers and don't want to eat points. Mm-hmm. The same goes if you ever want to get him back in. And that's why I said that at the start. Why are you doing it? You're not doing it like, I'm going to get rid of him for like a couple weeks and then get him back in a few weeks. You're doing it because
not getting him back.
You think, in general, what you've seen lately from City is going to be, so to speak, the new norm. Like, he's not going to reach those crazy heights that he did last year. So if you ever want to get him back in your team, you got to do the same thing. You're going to have to clear a lot of budget. You're going to have to do 2, maybe 3 transfers. If you have a wild card, you could do it then. Even if you've used your wild card, I know we get one in the new year. Mm-hmm. That's still I think 9 more games until we get to the new year. Yeah. That's almost a quarter of the season. So if you're doing it, like, that's why I said, why are you doing it? And it leads me to my other point is, let me ask you guys this. If you had to place your own money on which individual player is going to score the most goals from this point forward in the Premier League rest of the season, who are you putting your money on?
It's Haaland.
Probably Haaland, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of someone else to put in that category. I mean, if you had to if I put money on it, Haaland, by feel, you could say Chris Wood or someone. But if you're betting $1,000, you're going to put it on Haaland. Absolutely.
And so I feel like even if you have a wild card left or you want to, use your wild card in the new year to bring him back in, that has to be your whole strategy, right? Like, I'm going to use my wild card to bring back in Haaland. So you're kind of pigeonholing yourself into like one strategy if you ever want to get him back, or you have to wait a few weeks and accrue some transfers, can't account for injuries and poor form and stuff like that. So I just think if you're going to do it, you better have some long-term confidence that you're doing the right thing and you're going to produce more points without him, because he could go out this weekend and score 2 or 3 times. And I don't think any of us would be surprised, like one of you said.
Yeah, the problem is I've said that 3 weeks in a row.
But there's a lot of planning that goes into it. So you better have a plan if you're going to move him out. That's my opinion.
Can I say one thing before you go, Phil, and then I'll let you go? First thing is, to Dave's point, schedule is very important here. If you're going to make that move, make sure you're picking players that don't have really hard schedules. Because to his point, you won't get them back probably until week 9. So if you want to pick someone up, look at that schedule and make sure it's a decent schedule ahead. Isak has a decent schedule. It's not amazing. It's not terrible. And Salah. That's for me personally. Second point, I believe Dave is trying to persuade me out of getting rid of Haaland because he wants to be different.
I want you to get rid of him because you're going to do worse without him.
But also on the flip side of that, all the people out there who have now got off Haaland, is it better to, if you still have him, now we're differentiated from the rest of everyone out there to potentially do better than them. So that's another flip side.
They're stealing so much content from me.
Just remember, he's still 69% owned. That's FPL. So
69.
We'll see how that changes over the next week. But he's still pretty heavily owned.
Is he really 69, or do you just do that for the
I'm looking right at it.
I mean, that's a
nice percentage.
No,
God, I wish we had some sort of noise for that. All right, Philip, take it away before we steal any more of your content.
No. So I think I'm going to give another applause to Dave, because I think what he said is the exact thing you have to do with Haaland right now. Is I didn't get applause. In the long run, is he going to stay the same, or is he going to go back to his normal, even if he scores 2 out of every 3 games, right? City can't get much worse than this, and with someone like De Bruyne coming back, I think that's going to change. So if you sat on Haaland getting 2 points, 2 points, 2 points, not scoring for all this time, I don't think now's the time to get off of Haaland because with, again, De Bruyne coming back, those two have a really good connection, and that just creates a whole new dynamic for City's attack that benefits Haaland. So, in the long run, yeah, it's been a rough patch. I've personally still been able to find some success having Nicholas Jackson, Jimenez up there. You can do someone like Cunha instead of Jimenez too, and I've still been able to have Salah on my team. So there is ways around to still get guys that produce while keeping Haaland even through a rough patch. And again, to Dave's point, if you're thinking about long-term, there's not another forward that you expect to get as many goals as Haaland. Every other forward in the Premier League right now, that's considered a forward in FPL, right, is a tier 2 forward. That's Jackson, that's Watkins, and there's one guy
Havertz,
freaking blanking on.
Isak,
Welbeck. I mean, Welbeck and Wood have been doing great. Yeah. You would never consider them a tier 2 until this exact moment. So you're banking on a combination of probably 2 of those guys to do as well as Haaland over the next 20-plus games. And that's where I just don't think Haaland is going to keep doing as bad, and those guys are going to keep doing as well. So for that reason, I'm sticking with Haaland, and I think and I hope it ends up benefiting me.
Yeah, and before we wrap this up, I just want to point out that you are correct. I just looked it up. There's no official date, but Pep did hint that De Bruyne would be back after the international break.
Yeah,
potentially starting again. So to Phil's point, what we're really going to find out is Rodri the answer to that team fully, or is it also partly De Bruyne?
Are we sure De Bruyne's not back next week?
There's no official date. Or maybe I didn't see it, but I saw Pep hinted at the 23rd.
I might be mistaken, but I thought he subbed into it against Sporting with like 10 minutes left.
I meant starting.
Oh, gotcha.
I'm sorry. I meant that Pep hinted at him starting a game the 23rd.
Yeah, he subbed in with like 5 minutes left.
I should have said
that.
They're trying to ease him back in, is my point.
So,
all right. Perfect. So I think that is that's Haaland. I hope we gave you 3 different opinions, so take whichever one you feel comfortable with, and good luck with that situation because I do not think there's a right answer here. So, with that being said, let's talk. What are you laughing at?
Let's just
Phil and
nothing.
I think there's a right answer.
We think there's a right answer, but it's okay. That's why we're 3 people on this show, on this podcast.
Okay.
I don't know if it's a right answer.
We're not going to know if it's a right answer.
He could finish the season with 16 goals, and then you're going to be ticked off that you listened to me. And
Jagoffs.
But
all right, let's summarize. Let's summarize our players for the week because that's what people come here for.
Right. So I'll go since we're talking about Haaland. Alexander Isak for me is a wait and see because I want to. You can get him or you can drop him. He's tough for me. He's not a go get yet because I can't tell if he's got his legs yet or not. So he's a wait and see for me. That's what I'll say. Nice. I'm getting harassed over here, by the way, listeners.
I can't wait
laughing
for video.
At me. And then, yeah, that'll be good. Erling Haaland for me is a drop by just a little bit. He's so close to a wait and see, but at this point, he is now a drop for me.
Nice, Dave.
Fine. Mohammed Kudus, keep him in your back pocket. Was started to play well before the suspension. This could be a good differential pick in a couple weeks. And Kai Havertz, my recommendation was I will take Isak over him. I made that move myself. But if you don't need to transfer him out, I wouldn't be in a rush to do so. I think his form will come back along with Arsenal's play as a team and their good schedule coming up.
And I'll wrap it up with Solanke. Again, he's just one of those tier 2 forwards that you can throw in the mix if you're moving away from Haaland. The upside with him is that they do have really easy fixtures coming up, and they're projected the most goals. So he's bound to get some returns for you. And then Bruno Fernandes, I think he's a must pick if you can make that happen with a stretch of fixtures, just his involvement in the team, his recent form, the honeymoon phase. I just think he's going to produce a lot. So I'm all in on him, even though I hit him.
Love that. All right, we are going to go over our teams. We're going to stay with Phil. We're going to throw up at some point here through the recording, we're going to show you how our league is progressing, where we're sitting. But Phil, you won the week again, so let us know how you did.
I mean, it wasn't a pretty week because forwards sucked outside of Wood and Solanke. But again, a strong performance by Salah. I captained him. Semenyo was great. And then Murillo, too, who I recommended last week, and I picked him up. He got a clean sheet, 6 points. Let's go, El Matador. So, again, I'm really happy with where my team's at. And if Haaland picks it up a bit, it's just going to be easy for me.
Easy sailing. All right, Dave, you got second.
What if I don't have anyone that did well?
Well, give us your score.
I had 31? I don't even want to say that out loud.
Oh, if you don't want to say it, I'm in third place.
I did transfer in Brennan Johnson late last weekend. Thank goodness, because he had 8 points.
Did you take a negative 4 for that, or was that a transfer?
No, that was
perfect. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, that was 20 over 25% of my points.
Yeah.
But yeah, the rest of my team was garbage. Foden 4, Palmer 3. Oh, Matt Sells continues to be really good.
He's
6.
amazing. Yeah. He's amazing.
That's about it.
All right.
Bring us home, Sean. Good week.
Yes. Yeah, oh my goodness. Speaking of Matt Sells, he was my best player, if you can believe that. This is by far the worst week I have had. I finished 9,558,585, and I think there's 10,706,000 players.
Oh.
So that's how I did.
It's okay.
This week. It was very poor.
Okay.
I'll mention, because we mention it every week when we hit it, this is the first week for the season that all three of us have not been above the average.
You sure about that?
I don't think there's been any other week we haven't been above the average. No, I'm saying all three of us together.
All three of us together.
Yeah, you were above the average. Dave and I were under the average for the first time. Yeah, my team was terrible. They had 26 points. Matt Sells had 6. And Mbumo had 6. No one else got above 4. And Mbumo only had 6 because he was my captain. Yeah, I made a poor mistake, and I had a bunch of injuries, so I got worried, and I used my free hit on Wood for Nicholas Jackson, which was a terrible choice. And then I also used a hit for Iwobi instead of Semenyo. So the two best players I would have had, I subbed out for the week. It is what it is. Turns out all the players
happen.
Every player I had hurt played. Gabrielle, Wood, they all freaking played. McNeil, whatever. So it was a bad week. We'll get back to it next week. So currently, Phil's still in first. I'm in second. Dave's in third. You will see those scores on the video.
Right
if you
now.
go watch us on YouTube at Fireside FPL, you can see those. So let's wrap it up, boys, with captain, vice captain for the upcoming week.
Can I go first? Can I go first?
Absolutely.
Sure.
This is a really easy one. I'm going to do my Egyptian king, Mohammed Salah. I think he's going to be my solid captain for the next 2-3 weeks, and then Haaland will come back into the equation, and vice captain, not that it matters, but probably going to go with Mbumo because he also has decent fixtures coming up.
All right, Dave, you want to take it?
I don't really know yet. My Phil Foden probably has the best matchup against Brighton. So right now, I guess I'm going to captain him. And then Palmer plays Arsenal. Cunha plays Southampton. Isak Forest. Oh, man.
It's tough.
I'm going to go with Isak as the vice, he's in form at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I might switch this, but for now, Foden and then Isak.
Yeah, I'm in your similar boat, Dave. For now, the team I'm currently sitting on, I'm going to continue to captain Mbumo, and I will vice captain Haaland. But by the end of this week, I may be captaining Salah and vice captaining Mbumo. We'll see what decision I make on Haaland. I think I'm going to get rid of him, but we'll see what happens. And yeah, that's where I'm at with that. So with that being said, boys, another good episode. Everyone out there, if you're listening to us anywhere you find podcasts, you find us on Fireside FPL. If you're watching us on YouTube, find us at the same place, Fireside FPL. And if you are watching on YouTube, we would greatly appreciate a subscribe or a like or a comment or all three, whatever works for you. They're all free, and it'll really help us out. Please Please send us comments. We want to know how we're doing. We want your questions. We want your feedback. We want it all.
Listen, the only feedback we get right now is from our moms, and they obviously love us.
Of course.
And adore us, so it's not constructive criticism. So please comment things we could do differently, better, things you'd want to hear from us.
We also get comments from our wives, which are not so constructive, but that's okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't describe those as constructive all the time.
Yeah, well, we ignore those because they're too...
We only love our moms.
If we can.
Yeah, forget the wives. We love our mothers. That's all that matters.
That's weird.
No, but seriously, leave us a comment, like the video, subscribe to the video. We'd really, really appreciate it. And we'll be back next week, same time, same place.
Yes, sir.
Looking back at week 11, forward to week 12. And with that,
yes, sir.
see you.
See ya.
Bye.